we have Dr. Jack Rasmus. Now, Mr. Rasmus, welcome, Professor of Political Economy. What do you put this down to? This loss of essentially the Labour Party have not seen this kind of loss for decades. Some would put it to, some are saying it's down to Jeremy Corbyn's Brexit policy or lack of Brexit policy.
Well, there's probably several factors involved here that all converged. You know, a certain number of voters are still pro-Brexit. They've always been, even for 3.5 years. Some of them were sort of moderately pro-Brexit, but they just got tired of the 3.5 years of maneuvers and parliamentary machinations and just said, well, let's get it over with. Let's, even if we're not too sure, let's let Boris do it, and we'll see what happens. We're tired of this. To some extent, you know, Boris ran a pretty good campaign, promising not to cut the health service and some other social programs and stimulus spending, and that may have convinced some folks. The slander against Corbyn and the Labour Party about anti-Semitism was a pretty effective strategy with another group, I suspect. The Labour Party didn't really run a strong, effective strategy, and you know that affected some of it. But you know, longer term, the historic industrial base in Britain and in the U.S. and in other places has atrophied. You know, they've shipped Britain and the U.S. and Europe to some extent have shipped the industrial working class offshore to emerging markets. So, you know, that base does not exist. You can see a lot of parallels with the United States going on in recent years and with the UK. A little slower going on in, you know, Germany and France, perhaps, but the same developments going on long term. You know, and all that converged. Nationalism has reasserted itself here, both Boris's nationalism, let's get out of the EU and go it ourselves, and of course the Scottish nationalism probably cut into Labour votes a lot in Scotland, where they were, you know, typically strong. So nationalism has undercut, you know, typical class politics here significantly, and then you have the short-term strategic errors of the Labour Party and the effective strategy of Johnson and the Conservatives. All this has come together.
Dr. Rasmus, what would you put this rise of nationalism down to?
Well, I think the West and the, you know, advanced capitalist economies are slowing down. They're in trouble. They've been turning to financial profits and financialization industrially, partly because they've shipped their industrial base offshore. The economies are slowly stagnating. You can see it today in Europe. You can see it in Japan now. Even in the U.S. and the U.K., the growth rates are slowing down. So, you know, the policy is switching. The political policy ideology is switching to more nationalism as a distraction, I think, and as a false solution to the growing economic problems of income inequality and all the rest that are going on in these advanced economies. So I think nationalism is the response by some clever political elements, political class, to you know, the economic developments that are going on.
Okay, Dr. Jack Rasmus, Professor of Political Economy, joining us out of San Francisco. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution.